Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I have something in store for you that is quite a bit different from any video I've ever uploaded before. And it's a true story, something that happened to me many years ago, actually 30 or 29 years ago. And it's something that has stuck with me all these years, and I just felt inspired to share this story with you. It's something that happened in my past. It has always stuck with me, and I feel like it would be beneficial for someone to hear it, so I want to share this story with you today. Okay, so I am going to tell you a story, a true story, something that happened to me 29 years ago. And like I said in the intro, it's something that has stuck with me all these years. And I've felt like sharing this with you guys before, but I just never did. But I finally feel like now is the time. And I want to help people. I was a nurse for many years, and helping people and doing for others is something that is in my heart. And if this story can help one person that hears it, then it's well worth every bit of it. But I'm not going to edit the story. I'm going to speak from my heart. So here goes. Many, many years ago, 29 to be exact, I was very, very young, and I had two very small babies. They were a year and maybe 15 months apart, and I had gotten divorced. My husband was older than me, and it just didn't work out. I was a teenage bride. So I left, and I just moved out. I got my own apartment. I've always been pretty independent, and I've always been able to make things happen. So I knew that I couldn't stay in that marriage, and I knew that it's not that he was mean, he wasn't. It's just he was older than me, and I didn't love him, and I can't speak for him, but it was just a mistake. I was a teenage bride. So I did have to struggle. I had to struggle many years financially and find my own way. And my parents helped me from time to time, but most of the time they didn't help me as much as they probably would have. I always kept everything to myself. I've always been too proud to tell people some of the things that I'm going through. So I moved into an apartment, and it was a low-income apartment, but it was a very nice apartment, and it had yards, and it was just, it was really nice. It was a nice neighborhood and nice people. And so I met some of there were quite a few single moms living in that neighborhood. Well, one day, I saw a truck pull up, and there was a young lady out there and two small children, two little boys. And so I thought, oh, okay, we're getting some new neighbors. So I guess some time went on, and I worked in a doctor's office at the time, and my children were like 2.5 and 1. I mean, they were babies. And I would let them sit out on the front porch, or maybe Micah, my middle son at the time, he could have been about 16 months old, something like that. And they would sit out on the porch, and they had little chairs. And I would let them sit out there and eat popsicles or cookies, and I was always, sitting right there watching them. But I started noticing the two little boys that had just moved in started coming over. And they were older than my children, and I would guess them to be, they were close in age, probably 3 and 4, 4 and 5, something like that. And they would come over to my house, and it got more and more. They were always coming over, and I would say, "Where's your mommy?" And they would say, "She's asleep." And I'd say, "Well, who's watching you?" "Nobody." And so I was always watching to see what was going on over there. Sometimes I would see a big semi truck pull up, and I think it happened to be the little boy's daddy would come into town. And but I never really got to know her that well at that time. This is like over the course of the summer. But what did happen was I would wake up, you know, on a Saturday morning and raise up my blinds, and I would look outside, and the two little boys, and I can't even remember their names, were sitting out on my front porch. And then it even got to the point where if my blinds were closed, I would see something go past the blinds, and both of them were just like peeking in the blinds like that. You know, little bitty boys peeking in. And so I went to the door. I said, what do you get? What do you want? And they're like, we're hungry. And I said, well, where's your mommy? She's passed out. And I said, passed out? And then the older one said, yeah, she drinks a lot. She passed out. And we don't have any food. So I fed them. And that type of scenario literally went on the entire summer. And my children were used to having things. Not that I had money back then, because I did not. But my kids, you know, they got treats. They got cookies and things like that. And I remember the two little boys were out on my porch. They just stayed there. And I had given my kids some cookies, and I remember my kids, they took a bite and they'd just like toss it, because it, you know, it wasn't like a huge treat for them. And I saw them, the other little boys, grab it up off the ground. They didn't know I was watching through the window, and just cram it in their mouth. Like, oh, it was the best thing ever. And it broke my heart. So I went out there and I gave them the whole pack of cookies. I'm like, do you like cookies? Yeah, we don't ever have cookies. We don't have any money. And anyway, it just went on and on like that. If I think of any other scenarios, but basically that's the type of thing that would happen all the time. Sometimes they'd say, can we come in? Or, you know, and I'm not gonna lie, it's not like I was just the best person in the world, because I was really annoyed by it. I would think, my gosh, why doesn't she feed her kids? Or I wish these kids would get off my porch. You know, I mean, I can't lie and say that I was just like, oh, come in, I'll give you this, I'll give you that. But at the same time, I did do a lot for them, because yes, my heart felt for them, but I was aggravated at the same time. And so, like I said, it literally went on for months. And I got really angry one day, and I had never met her. I just saw her out in the yard, and she'd kind of wave her hand at me. And so I went over there one day, and I knocked on the door, and I'm like, do you realize that your boys are always coming to my house asking for cookies and food, and they tell me that you're passed out, and I would appreciate it if you would take better care of your kids. I've got two of my own, and I'm a single mom. I mean, I'll pretty much let her have it, you know? And anyway, and here's the ironic part. I noticed that she had lots of scars up and down both of her legs, on her arms. I mean, she was very scarred up. And my ex-husband, his dad, was killed in a car accident many years before that. And this girl, her name was Myra. I remember her name. She was in the accident that killed my ex-husband's dad. And I think several teenagers were killed. My ex-husband's dad was killed. And I believe it was maybe 3 or 4 teenagers. And what's so weird is I was still in high school when that happened, and I remember that story. It happened on Beeson's Gap, and I remember all that. And I remember asking her, what happened to your legs? Why are you so scarred up? And she said, oh, I was almost killed in a car accident. And she said, they pronounced me dead at the scene. And she told me about it. And when she was telling me about it, I was thinking to myself, that sounds like the accident that killed at the time, my boyfriend's dad. And so I questioned her and found out, indeed, it was the same accident. How ironic, many years later, after I had children, did she move next door to me. I hope this is making sense and you're able to follow what I'm saying. But it was just weird. It was just ironic. So we figured out, you know, and she said, oh, please don't tell your boyfriend who I am because he won't like me, you know, because the teenagers were racing up the mountain and his dad was coming up the mountain, but he was drunk and they all hit head on. It was terrible. But anyway, I figured out who she was and we kind of developed a friendship, but the kind of friendship that it almost felt like I was her mom. We were about the same age, but I was always getting on to her because she just, you know, I would go over there and I'd say, you know what, you need to clean this place up. You don't need to let your little boys live like this. I mean, I really was bold with her and I was trying to help her, but at the same time, many, many times I was very aggravated with her because I was a single mom. I did not get much child support at all. I worked in a clinic and I just had my little paycheck week to week. I took care of my babies and that's about all I did until she moved in. And then I took care of her kids and her. So many times I would get a grocery bag and unload my cabinets, corn, canned corn, things out of my freezer, and take her bags of food and said, you can cook them a meal now. Because, I mean, she literally hardly had anything. I don't know if she could get, you know, assistance back then. I don't know. I just remember I was always giving her my groceries. And when her ex would come into town, he would give her a little bit of money. And so she'd have maybe $100. And to her, I guess she felt like she was loaded. And she would say to me, and she didn't have a car. She'd say, would you drive me to McDonald's so I can get dinner for me and the boys? And I'm like, no, I will not. But I'll take you to the grocery store and you can make your money last and you'll have more food. So really, that's the kind of relationship that we had. It wasn't like we were buddies or anything. And I do remember one time she got really, really sick and she had a high fever, and I told the doctor that I had worked for and he let me take home a syringe of penicillin, and we always got all these samples from the drug reps. He gave me some medicine, you know, and he'd ask me how was she doing, and I remember I gave her an injection of penicillin, and I was just always helping her or driving her somewhere where she had to go. And even though I was doing all this stuff, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I'm just the sweetest person. A lot of it I did it and I was pissed off about it because I didn't want to do it. I mean, I had other things I wanted to do except, you know, and not take care of her, but I was constantly doing things for her. So I really can't remember how long we lived close to each other. And she had been a drug abuser and her teeth were rotten. She had missing teeth, brown decayed teeth, and she just looked like a mess. She was skinny. And so anyway, like I said, I don't know how long we lived near each other. I would say probably a year and a half, something like that. And I would always lecture her about, you need to do this or this. You need to be here for your kids. They don't need to see you passed out. They come over and tell me this and tell me that. You need to be a better mother, you know. And I would tell her all those things and like yell at her, really. Like, you know, I was just aggravated. And there were many times I'd say, look, I'm not helping you anymore. You help yourself. You know, there's some people that just, you know, if you're not willing to help yourself, I'm not helping you anymore. And I wouldn't for a while. And then the little boys would be out there, and I mean, it was just constantly. Okay, I can't tell you everything that happened, or would be here all night. But anyway, fast forward a couple, let me see, maybe 3-4 years later, maybe not that much, maybe about 3 years later. Well, I had moved away. I had gotten married to my second husband. He's the dad of my youngest son, Matthew. And Matthew, I know it was 29 years ago because he was just born. He was an infant. And we lived in a rented house, and it was a nice little house. And I always left the front door open, and a glass door, and there were these big windows, and we could always just see outside. And kids, like my older children, loved to just stand at the door. And so one day I heard a peck at the door, and I came out from the bedroom and I saw a young girl standing there, and I didn't know who it was, and I just went to the door. I said, "Can I help you?" And she said, "You already have." And I was like, "Do I know you?" And she was like, "Yeah." And we just stood there. I mean, seriously, it's like this. I mean, we stood there and stared at each other, and she started to cry. And I thought, what in the crap? Who is this? Why is she crying? I mean, I honestly did not recognize her. It was Myra. And she said, "May I come in?" And I said, "Okay." And she said, "You don't recognize me?" And I said, "No, who are you?" And she said, "Myra." And when she said Myra, our eyes met, and I instantly knew who she was. But I'm going to tell you something. She did not look like the same person. She did not look like the same person. She looked healthy. She had had dental work done, nice teeth. Her hair was fixed, and she wasn't skinny like she used to be. I mean, she didn't look like the same person at all. And she told me, she said, "Yota, you have no idea." She said, "I've been looking for you, and you have no idea how much you have helped me. You helped me change my life." She said, "I was in so much trouble, and you always helped me, and you gave me those talks." And I said, I feel like I was mean to you." She said, "You did the best thing for me." She said, "I've got my life together. I'm happy. I don't do drugs. My boys are happy." She said, and I said, "And your teeth look so pretty." And she said, "I've had dental work done." And she said, "We live in a double wide trailer, and it's really nice." And she said, "I'm just very happy." And she said, "I've never stopped thinking about you, how you fed my children, and how you would drive me to the grocery store." And she said, "Yes, and even you would scold me." She said, "But it was the best thing for me." And she said, "When you moved away, I just felt all alone." And that's the thing. I know we moved away because I ended up getting married. We never said our goodbyes because I never really considered her my friend. She was just a very annoying neighbor who I helped. And, but several years later, you know, she shows up at my door thanking me. I have never forgotten that. And I didn't do it, and I'm not telling you now about how I helped her and what happened and became of her. So you'll say, "Oh, Yota, you're so wonderful." It's not that. But I just want to share with you how important it is to be kind to people. And yes, I wasn't always kind to her, but I always helped her. And you never know what kind of impact you can have on somebody's life, because like I said, I was just a young mother. I was a teenage bride and had my babies very young, and no help, no support. My parents actually at that time were in Greece, and I was pretty much alone, but I was always able to take care of myself. And she just needed some help, and I did help her. But like I said, I never knew the impact that I had made on her life and her children's lives. And she got her act together, and I just couldn't believe it. And for some reason, I just felt like sharing this story. It's something that will always be with me. I have no idea where Myra is now. I have an idea of the area where she lives, but we never, and back then people didn't have cell phones and, oh, you know, add me on Facebook. It was none of that, because I don't even think I had a cell phone back then. Because like I said, we're talking 29 years ago. My youngest son is 29 years old. So, yeah. But I don't know where Myra is now. I don't know what has become of her. But I know that she came to my house that day. And the day that she came to my house and told me how much I had helped her and helped her get her act together. And she said, when you left, I felt alone and I was scared. I didn't know how I was going to make it. And she said, I just picked myself up and did the same thing that you did. I just started going to work. I stopped drinking. I started taking care of my kids. And she said, things started happening. And she said she was happy and just wanted to come and tell me and thank me. And I'll never forget it as long as I live. And I just really wanted to share this story with you guys. So be kind to others. Help others in need. Now, there's a big difference letting people take advantage of you. That's a huge difference. But if you see someone in need, help them. And don't look down your nose at other people because they don't have as much as you do, or they don't look as nice as you do. Because, you know, back then I didn't have any money. I was just a medical assistant working in a doctor's office, very, very young. But I helped her, but I didn't even know I was helping her at the time. So my whole moral of this story is, I hope that it touches someone. I hope it helps you, and just be kind to others, because there's so much going on in this world. It breaks my heart when I watch the news and I see the things that's going on. Love one another. We don't all have to be different. I think differences is what makes the world go round. And, you know, my ethnicity is different from most of the people, well, in my town where I live. And when I was in school, I felt like an outcast. My sister and I, and then there were 2 Italian girls, and we kind of got lumped up into a group. But just be kind to others. You never know. You might change a life. Well, that's all I have for you guys today. I felt very inspired to tell you this story. I have for quite some time. I hope that it inspired you to be kind to others. We don't all have to be the same. Differences in people is what makes the world go around. Be kind to others. Until next week, bye-bye.